Hello, this is Larry Pond. Today we're going to talk about the California middle class tax refund. And we've been getting a lot of questions about this topic, so that's why I thought it'd be really important to record this video. So let's get started. First, a little bit about me. I'm Larry Pond. I'm a CPA, a PFS, CFP, EA, USTCP, and an AEP here in River Shores, California. I've been a tax professional since 1986, and I really enjoy talking about taxes. Also, I teach individual income tax at my local community college, and I really enjoy doing that to get more people into the tax profession. So let's get started on our topic today, the middle class tax refund. It was authorized as part of the California budget under AB 192, provided $9.5 billion in tax refunds and payments. The payments are automatically being issued starting in October of 2022 through January of 2023. Although some payments are still coming out through the month of February of 2023, and there's been a whole bit of confusion about that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. To qualify for this middle class tax refund, you would have to file a 2020 tax return by October 15th, 2021. You have to meet certain adjusted gross income limitations. You cannot be eligible to be claimed as a dependent in 2020. You have to be a California resident for at least 6 months in 2020. And at the time of payment, you have to be a California resident. So if you left California when this money comes out, you're not eligible for the payment. If you're deceased or if you're incarcerated, you're not eligible for these payments. So if you haven't filed a tax return by October 15th, 2021 for your 2020 tax return, you're out of luck. You're not going to get this middle class tax refund. Now, the payments are going to be direct deposit to your bank account if you filed your tax return electronically and had the refund paid via direct deposit. This is great if you didn't change bank accounts, if you didn't close bank accounts, and everything's the same back in 2021 when you filed your 2020 tax return. If you did that, that should be pretty easy. You check your bank statement, you'll see a deposit of a certain dollar amount, and you'll see the code CA space MCTR for middle class tax refund. And you're wondering, what's this mystery deposit? That's what it's for. Now, if you did not take your tax refund by direct deposit, you would get a debit card. And we'll talk about that a little more later here. According to the law, according to AB 192, it's excludable from California gross income. It did not address the taxability for federal purposes. Also, these payments are not subject to any withholding or levy for any outstanding state tax liabilities or other outstanding state fees, penalties, or tolls. So this payment would not be intercepted. The Franchise Tax Board provided a middle class tax refund estimator. Here's the link here, just to see what am I entitled to? What's the amount going to be? Well, here's the table that kind of spells this out for you. And it's based on your filing status, if you have a dependent or not, and your income. So let's start at the top here. Who's going to get the biggest payment? It's someone who's married filing jointly with at least one dependent with less than $150,000 of income. That's $1,050. That's the maximum amount. The minimum amount is $200. That's for a single person with no dependents, with income of less than $250,000, but more than $125,000. So the range for the payments would be $200 to $1,050. And you can look at this chart here to see where you might fit in and see if you did actually get those amounts. So you can take a look at this. So let's take a look at one more individual here. Let's say your income is less than $150,000. You're married, no dependents. That's $700. If you're single, you have less than $75,000 income with no dependents. That's $350. So with this level of income, it's pretty high. You have to be over $500,000 if you're married, filing jointly to get nothing, or more than $250,000 of income if you're single to get nothing. And head of household, it's pretty high. It's $500,000. So in 2020, if you filed as head of household, it's a pretty good chance you would get a payment. So you can take a look at this chart here to see what your refund's going to be. Here's the debit card envelope. It's a plain looking envelope. The return address will say middle class tax refund with the Omaha, Nebraska return address. The cards will be, I think, a bank based in New York. On the back of the card, there's the 800 number to call. If you did not want to use the debit card, you can say, hey, I don't want to use this debit card. Can you send me a check instead? And they will do that. I know it's been frustrating contacting customer service because they're overwhelmed. There's been issues with the debit cards. For some people, they pull it up on their ATM and they find all the money's gone because the fraudsters have taken it. So there's some challenges with these debit cards. So the advice the franchise taxpayer is giving, when you get it, cash it in immediately or deposit the money in your bank account as soon as possible. Don't let it sit around because for some reason the thieves are really good at taking money from these. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. So the advice is if you get it, cash it as quickly as possible. So the question is this payment taxable? For California purposes, the answer is no. It's written in the law. It's specifically in the law saying it's not taxable, and that's where California leaves it. They're not going to comment on the federal side because they have no control over how the federal government taxes items. So let's talk about if it's taxable for federal purposes. So why is this even a concern? Because the state had the Golden State stimulus for the last couple of years before that, and no 1099s were issued. So therefore, no one even talked about this. Well, the 1099 miscellaneous are being issued now. Many taxpayers are getting them. They're wondering what to do with it. Is it taxable? And there's some disagreement in the tax community. So we're going to talk about the law here on how it works. Now, one word of warning, just because it's reported on the 1099 miscellaneous doesn't mean it's taxable. It's just a requirement that if you make a payment of more than $600, you have to issue a 1099. Now, it's called a middle class tax refund, but it's not really a tax refund. There's no refund of taxes. It's just a payment. So it's not a tax refund. The California law says it's not a tax refund, which is why we're not getting a 1099-G for this. You're getting a 1099 miscellaneous, and 1099 miscellaneous applies if it's $600 or more. So let's see if this is taxable or not. How does the tax law work? Well, under Section 61, it says that all income from whatever source derived is gross income. It's taxable income. So that's the overall statement of what's an income. That's overall, right? Unless it's otherwise provided. So there's a whole list of exclusions on what is not taxable, and we have to look for that. So there's something called the general welfare exclusion. And I'm going to read the sentence here. Certain payments to individuals by governmental units under legislative provided social benefit programs for the promotion of general welfare of the public, for example, based on need, are not includable in gross income. That's the general welfare exclusion. Well, to qualify for the general welfare exclusion, you have 3 qualifications. Number 1, it must be made from a governmental fund. Number 2, it must be made for the promotion of general welfare. Generally, it's based on individual or family needs such as housing, education, and basic sustenance expenses. Number 3, does not represent compensation for services. You didn't work for this. You didn't have to do anything to earn this money. So those are the 3 requirements. So what qualifies for a general welfare exclusion includes assistance to help disaster victims meet necessary expenses and serious needs in medical, dental, housing, personal property, transportation, and funeral expenses. And we've seen these provisions happen after a hurricane, tornadoes, and recently winter storms. What does not qualify are for non-essential expenses, luxurious items, or decorative items. Now, the IRS has given us some more guidance through IRS Notice 2002-76. It's got a pretty extensive description of the general welfare exclusion and some examples and all that. So, does this middle class tax refund qualify for the general welfare exclusion? Well, let's take a look at test number 1. Payments made by governmental fund. Yes, check. So we got number 1. Let's jump to number 3 because that's an easy one. Number 3, recipient not required to perform any services in order to receive payment. Check. You didn't have to work for it. Some people say they are because getting to activate those debit cards are a bit of work and all that, but you didn't have to perform any services to get it. So number 1 and number 3, I think we got those. Those are pretty clear. How about test number 2? Payments must be based on individual or family needs, such as housing, education, and basic sustenance expenses. Now, the state said the purpose of the payments to provide financial relief for economic disruptions from COVID-19 and inflation. Remember, the original discussion was to help California drivers pay for gas because, in California, some gas stations I drove by was charging $7 a gallon or more. Wow, do you see the diesel prices? It was over $7. So it's pretty high in California. There's some question about that, right? Is that a check? Yes, no? My personal official answer is I don't know. It's not that crystal clear to me. You can look at Notice 2002-76. I officially don't know, right? Because there's all kinds of arguments about number 2 here. Because the way the middle class tax refund was computed was just based on your income. Doesn't matter if you had a need or not. Doesn't matter if you're affected by the pandemic or you're affected by inflation. What if you didn't drive, so you didn't have high gas prices, or you didn't eat meat, so you weren't affected as much by inflation. You didn't drink milk. You didn't buy eggs. You only ate vegetables. Vegetables went up a little, right? But these are very good questions. I don't know the answers to it. So for me personally, number 2, I say maybe some tax professionals, very reputable tax professionals, says, yes, we qualify for number 2. Some say, no, we don't qualify for number 2. I will leave that up to you if we meet test number 2 or not. If you're confident about that, go for it. If you're not confident about it, probably not. So let's say you're confident that we meet all 3 rules for the general welfare exclusion. This is how to claim it. If you get a 1099, always report it. Never leave off a 1099, even if you think it's not taxable. Report it, because if you don't report it, it's going to generate a CP 2000 notice from the IRS saying, hey, you left something off your return, you owe us money. So the way to claim it is on your Form 1040, Schedule 1, line 8Z under other income, you put that number there. The biggest number is $1,050. The smallest number is probably $600, right? So it's between $600 and $1,050. How much? Let's say you weren't sure that this qualifies, so I'm going to pay the tax on. How much is it going to cost you? Well, take a look what your income's going to be. You're probably in a very low tax bracket, right? 10% maybe. So that means the tax bill on that, at worst case scenario, could cost you $100. But we'll see, right? You have to run the numbers to see. Depends on the other things going on your tax return. You report the income on Schedule 1, line 8Z under the other income line. And I would put down 1099 miscellaneous, franchise tax board, boom, $1,050. That's the biggest number, or $600, the smallest number. And then on the back of Schedule 1, exclude on Form 1040, Schedule 1, line 24Z, other adjustment. Now, I would give some detail to the IRS. I wouldn't just put a number there and just leave it at that. The IRS is not going to know what that means. And it might generate a letter. It might generate a notice. So I always give them as much information as possible. Include a statement that you're excluding payment based on the general welfare exclusion. You can do that and just say, this is the California middle class tax refund. I believe it qualifies for the general welfare exclusion. Bam, this is how I'm reporting it. So what about IRS guidance? Have we gotten IRS guidance? The answer is no. No specific guidance. We've called the IRS, right? And admittedly, I would say the best answers I've been getting are kind of wishy-washy. they keep using the words may. Well, that's not helping us, right? If you use the word may, what does that mean, right? So the most recent guidance we got from the IRS is Fact Sheet 2022-36, which is updated on September 28th, 2022. Because a lot of other states were doing the same thing or doing similar things, but different variations of how California is doing it. Now, if you go to this fact sheet, it'll show you the updated FAQs. I think there's at least a half a dozen updated FAQs, and they're very specific, but none of them matched our fact pattern here in California. They were related to unemployment insurance. They were related to specific disaster relief and those sorts of things. They're very specific to what was going on in other states, but not necessarily the middle class tax refund. So the IRS updates the FAQ for states and local governments on taxability and reporting of payments from coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. So that's what the FAQ is referenced to, but nothing specific to the middle class tax refund. So what can you do? This is where I'm enlisting your help here. I have written a sample letter that you can give to your member of Congress, and you can give to your IRS stakeholder liaison. So I hope you're in contact with the stakeholder liaison. If you're a tax professional, you should get to know who your stakeholder liaison is. That's a really helpful person, especially if you're noticing certain problems. You're noticing you're getting a lot of notices on a certain topic or just a systemic issue. You let them know. Things happen, and hopefully this will help make things happen. So I drafted this. You can change the words if you want to, but this is just my suggestion. They're a member of Congress and stakeholder or stakeholder liaison. I'm a tax professional getting ready for this tax season. California is issuing Form 1099 miscellaneous for the California middle class tax refund. We are aware that is not taxable for California tax purposes. However, there's some confusion in the tax committee on whether this is taxable for federal purposes or not. Some experts say it is taxable, and equally reputable tax experts say it is not. What they do have in common is that they are all asking for IRS guidance. I am seeking your assistance to contact the IRS and ask them to provide definitive guidance on whether the California middle class tax refund is taxable for federal purposes or not. We are looking for a notice or an FAQ. If they need more information, we can certainly provide it. Thank you for your assistance in the matter, since we want to get on with tax season, your constituent. So, is this that big of a deal? Some tax professionals say, not really. The number's not that big. The worst case scenario is $1,000. How much is the tax on $1,000? $1,050. Well, it depends on your tax bracket, right? Depends on what your tax bracket is in 2022. Maybe your income's now a whole lot better than what it was back in 2020. So a lot of questions about this. So if you can tell all your friends, of course, change the wording, because if you're not a tax professional, just edit this. But this is my suggested text. Who are you send it to? Look up your House of Representatives. Here's a link to the congressional website. Type in your state and your zip code. Bam! I'll tell you who your member of Congress is. And then I have in California. This is a California problem. So we have Dianne Feinstein. There's a link to her office, and Alex Padilla. I've talked to congressional offices. They get a lot more response if you send a paper letter. So paper letter, a visit, a phone, do all the above. Send a letter, send an email, leave a phone message. If you happen to be in a neighborhood of their district office, drop it off at the district office. I think that's a great idea. Get all your friends to do it, because this will help us pressure the IRS to give it to us, because it's in the middle of tax season already. Tax season has started. We like to know. These are some local IRS stakeholder liaisons, and that's okay. Keep bugging him. We got Lionel here, Lionel Carrillo. Yeah, he's the one that I said I got his email, but it's wishy-washy. Come on, Lionel, give us something a little more definitive. Well, he's not in the position of authority to do that. It'll be the IRS national office via an FAQ or a notice. So this is where we got to get it escalated. Susan Dew and Alexa Lamb. These are our stakeholder liaisons. If you have your other stakeholder liaisons, send them an email too. more pressure, the better. They are aware of this, but the more they hear, the better. So I'm looking forward to getting a response. So maybe I can update this presentation when we hear. Some other questions about this middle class tax refund. I got the 1099 miscellaneous for 2022, but I didn't get the money until 2023. Well, that depends, right? If the debit card did not arrive until 2023, so that means you didn't really get the money until 2023, but you got a 2022 1099 miscellaneous. Don't leave it off your return. Report it on line 1, schedule 1, line 8Z, and then back it out on schedule 1, line 24Z. Explain that the money was not received until 2023. And of course, don't forget to report on the 2023 tax return. But if you get your debit card in 2022, but you didn't do anything about it until 2023, well, it's still reportable in 2022 because you had dominion and control over it. So it's still counted for 2022. Now, we've been hearing a lot of stories in the news of people who had money from their debit card stolen. They have the debit card, they went to the ATM or went to the bank, and the money's gone, or it was less. They said, well, I started with $700. I didn't take anything out of it. Now I only have $100. What happened? And I've heard all kinds of stories from people where the money's being spent. A lot of times it's not even in California. In one case, it was in Alabama, other parts of the country, or even other parts of the world. So not sure what they're doing with security. However, the franchise tax board says when you get the debit card, cash it as quickly as possible to prevent the thieves from stealing money from it. So you might have gotten your debit card in 2022, but the money got stolen, and you end up getting it now, 2023. Well, see above. It's like, yeah, I didn't get the money until 2023. So I know this can get a little complicated. So just watch out for it and be careful about this. But the most important thing is don't leave it off your tax return. This sheet here has some resources. The Middle Class Tax Refund FTB webpage, there's a link to that. Help with the middle class tax refund. Those are some FAQs from the franchise tax board about the middle class tax refund, including the phone numbers to call for help or if you have any problems. And then the IRS FAQ link is right here. Maybe by the time you click on it, the IRS has updated it. Right now, it's as of September of 2022. So hopefully they would update this soon. So thank you for your time today. And I hope you can help us get some resolution from our friends at the IRS. It'd be great. And good luck. Have a great tax season. If you have any other questions or any topics you'd like to hear me talk about, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do it. So thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.